Hello, everybody. And I have to admit, I've been trying so hard not to say, hey, y'all. But you know what? I'm from Texas. That's what I do. Hey, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to the third of a series of just videos that I got the inspiration just to bring you and introduce wonderful friends of mine who are doing wonderful things in this life. So, if you haven't yet, go and check out the first two. The first one is Jasmine Edmond. We talked about just her life living abroad and her family's decision just to, as she said, throw caution to the wind and just live now in Dubai. And they have dreams and aspiration of just kind of circling the globe. So check that out. And then there was Tanika Pierce. She brought you her family's journey of losing her child in 2017, and that video is getting some awesome reviews. Make sure to go back, check it out, share it, share them both. But for right now, what I want to do is a quick housekeeping. Don't forget to go check out the book. It is called Acing Motherhood and Failing Marriage, and it is available on Amazon, Kindle, and two local bookstores in Dallas, at Concord Bookstore and at OCBF. And then register for the class if you're interested. That's going to be at Concord on January the 11th to go deeper into the book. And enough about me, and I want to introduce you to my wonderful friend. Her name is Lia, and I'm going to give her the opportunity to give you a little bit of information about herself now.
Okay. My name is Lia Young. I am a registered nurse. I went to TWU. That's where I met Myra. I'm the mother of 5. I have 3 stepchildren and 2 from my womb. Love them all the same. And I had a double lung transplant about 14 months ago.
Okay, I just got chills when she said that, and I'm just so excited to bring you the story. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Lia, is for people who don't know your journey, is to give them, and it's almost hard to say, like a summary, because it was so much of, when you first started having symptoms all the way to the double lung transplant. So give them a scope of your journey and everything that happened.
Okay. Well, it was about a 5-year process. I didn't know that at first, of course. But in 2011, I started experiencing chills. I had joint pain. I was very fatigued. I was refereeing basketball at the time, so I thought, I'm just getting old. But it just became progressively worse. I went to the doctor, and eventually, over 3 months, they diagnosed me with pneumonia in both lungs. And I went to several physicians, immunologists, respiratory therapy, all sorts of doctors to figure out what this was, and that's what they came up with. So after 3 months, I recovered, went back to work. Then I became pregnant in 2012, and I had her via emergency C-section in May of 2013. When we did the C-section, my respiratory status failed. I actually was admitted at 33 weeks because I had pneumonia again. My respiratory status failed during delivery. They put me in a coma, told my husband I was gonna die, prepare the family, but obviously I overcame that, and God brought me through and recovered from that. About 3 to 6 months after her delivery, I got this cough back, and I was like, okay, what is this? And I went to my doctor, and they said, oh, it's pneumonia again, and I was like, this is not just pneumonia. Let me go get a second opinion. So I did, and was eventually referred to National Jewish Hospital in Denver. So I spent 2 weeks in Denver. They did a battery of tests, and they diagnosed me with scleroderma, which is an autoimmune disease, in January of 2014. So they said, you have 40% use of your lungs. This is a progressive disease. You're probably going to need a lung transplant. That was the first time someone said, this is a possibility.
Wow.
So they referred me back to UT Southwestern in Dallas. I started being monitored by them. In 2015 of the fall, I was placed on the transplant list. And they just, monitored my status to make sure I was okay. They told me that there would be a window where I was well enough to survive the surgery and not too sick to survive the surgery, but not too well to go without it. And so they didn't know when that would be, but they needed me to be ready. So I prepared for the transplant. I was on the list for a year, so this is now, like September 2016. I had gone to Houston to try to be double listed there so that I'd have 2 institutions basically to get lungs from. I went and did a procedure with them in Houston, came back 3 days later. I got sick, went to the hospital, UT Southwestern, stayed on there. I was on 40 liters of oxygen. Eventually they couldn't help me.
40 liters.
40.
Like, I don't know, for people who don't really have much experience in the medical field, but this 40 liters is blowing my mind right now.
So I started out with 2.
Exactly.
Just puffs. You know, just whenever I would breathe, it would give me an extra push. And then as the years went on and I got sicker, it went from, you know, 2 to 6 to continuous to, you know, 10 liters at rest, then 15 liters at rest. And then eventually when I was admitted, it was 40.
So with every single increase in what you required as far as oxygen, that was different machinery and equipment.
Yes.
So when you're on 40 liters of oxygen, you were not able to go anywhere. I mean,
No.
it's like, so what does 40 liters of oxygen look like?
40 liters is a, you know, you have your nasal cannula, like a little, you know, the little tubes in your nose that you see people walk around with, or there's a mask, and then there's a machine that pushes at a certain rate. So there's a force involved as well as the amount of oxygen you're getting, and it's warmed up so that it doesn't dry out your respiratory system.
So we're not talking about what we see sometimes with people, because you had this as well, like a portable tank.
Right.
Or
that was an early day.
That was early.
Yeah, that was like the 2-liter situation. And then, but as I got to 8 or 10, I had the like grandma going to bingo tall.
The little green thing.
The tall green tank that I drug everywhere I went.
But then at 40, you were...
Yeah, I'm on a machine.
You're on a machine in a room.
So I went, when I was admitted in the hospital in September, it was September 19th, my mother's birthday. You know, they put me on, it was like 25 at the time. But quickly it went up to 40. And I was at the max that they could do. And they were, you know, telling my husband things and we need to intubate her, but I knew that intubating me is basically starting the clock to my death. They were going to give me 14 days. If I didn't find a donor within those 14 days, they were going to pull the plug and I would die.
So they said, we need to intubate you. And as soon as we intubate you, and give a quick definition of intubation.
So they basically put a tube in and they breathe for you.
So we're going to put a tube down you and let it breathe for you.
And you'll be unconscious.
And during this whole 14 days, you'll be unconscious. We're going to pull the tube at 14 days. And what?
About 20 minutes you'll pass. With the condition of my lungs, they estimated about 20 minutes.
So if there was no available lung found in that 14 days, no matter what, they were going to take you off of the intubation. And within 20 minutes of taking that tube out, you would die.
I would die. And what's so crazy is that the day that they intubated me, because we had talked to the doctor, you know, about what we need to do and when we need to do it, and I was like, no. But if it's the only thing that you can do to save or extend my life, to give me a chance to get a donor, then do it. But I want that to be the absolute last resort. Thing. And call my husband. And so he didn't get that call.
Wow.
And so he's stuck on 35 with my daughter trying to come to UT Southwestern. And they're like, we really can't wait any longer. We have to intubate her. So he didn't even get to see me that day prior to me being intubated.
Okay, it's so much, y'all. Okay, so I'm gonna back up. Okay, all this stuff is happening. You're coughing, having pneumonia. You're not knowing why, and then you finally get the diagnosis of scleroderma. And the doctor at that time, this is like what, 2013?
This is January 2014.
2014 is when you finally, after 2 years of back and forth with different symptoms, you finally get the diagnosis of scleroderma. And the doctor tells you what?
The doctor says, you have 40% use of your lungs. This is scleroderma. It's not treatable. I mean, it's treatable, but it's not curable. You're probably going to need a lung transplant sometime in your lifetime because you're only 35 and you have other physical ailments.
Right.
And so at the time, you know, my youngest daughter's 6 months old. I have 4 other kids, And so all these things are going through my head, like.
And how old were you at this time?
35. I turned 35 on my daughter's birthday. And so, you know, I'm like, am I going to see 40? You know, and they're like, well, if you do get a transplant, it probably is only going to last about 5 years. So I'm like, am I going to see 40? Am I going to see her 5th birthday? Am I going to see, you know, graduations and my retirement or grandkids? You know, all of those were questionable.
Exactly. And so when you and your husband first got the diagnosis, and tell me about when you left the office, just the conversation between you two and the emotion of learning that you have a progressive lung disease, that even after a transplant, they were giving you 5 years.
Yeah, it was just, we were numb, because how can you deliver that message in the same breath? Basically, just, you have 5 years to live if you get a transplant. And, you know, we were in the car, we were in Denver, so we were out of our comfort zone, and my in-laws were there with us, but they weren't in the doctor's office with us. But just, you know, thinking of the future, and it really put our life on pause, because we didn't know from one day to the next, you know, are we going to get the call today? Am I going to die today? You know, what is going to happen? So it was just a lot of, you know, crying and unknown and wondering what was going to happen.
Gotcha. So as you saw your symptoms progress, what was your day-to-day like? Did you continue to work? Was there anything that you and Robert intentionally did to prepare for your untimely death? Just what were the things that you did after the initial diagnosis?
Right. So with scleroderma, it's kind of like lupus or sarcoidosis. And so things kind of set you off. And so, you know, it's too cold, it's too hot, the allergens are high, can all affect that. And so I tried to do everything I could, you know, but knowing my body when to stop. And so I stayed at work full time. My husband would, you know, exchange my tanks for me. I would load up 4 or 5 tanks. So I'd have, you know, oxygen on the way to work, oxygen on the way back, oxygen at work. You know, I would go to soccer practices, but I would sit in the car because the wind or the heat or the cold would be, you know, too much. I'd do their hair. I try to, you know, have their hair in braids, things that I could, you know, still provide for them, but not have to put a lot of energy to. It's kind of like, okay, you got this much energy today. What are you going to spend it on?
Yeah, what are the priorities?
You have to go to the bathroom. Well, maybe you should go to the bathroom and do this and this and this and this while you're up. Because that's just how much, you know, do you have to take a shower tonight, or it's just, you really have to
So how was this, how was with the kids, because you have little kids, how did they manage seeing mommy sick?
Well, my youngest daughter, she's 4 now, but she never saw me without oxygen. And so all her life, she saw me with, you know, the nasal cannula, with the long cord. You know, I had a 50-foot cord that I would put on when I was at home, and it'd be all around the house. But with my 8-year-old, she took on a lot of responsibility. She was really worried about mommy. She was very keen on, you know, if I coughed, or, you know, if I was just laying in bed, she would, you know, are you okay? What's going on? And so they saw a lot. And I think, you know, you want to keep them informed, but on their level, because you don't want them to worry too much, because that's not their responsibility.
So I'm gonna fast forward, because it was so much. So like Lia said, every month, every year, it was a progressive decline in her health, and it culminated with her being intubated in a hospital, and the clock started that the doctor said, if we don't find lungs within this 14-day intubation, forced coma, you're gonna die. And you described that throughout the majority of your diagnosis, you were directing your care. You were the nurse. It was your body, so your husband just kind of followed through with what you wanted, and how you and the decisions that you and the doctors made. You kind of informed him, and that's what you went with. So let's get to 14 days. You're intubated, and just tell us how Robert stepped in and what that looked like.
Well, you know, I was intubated. I didn't get to see him before I was. But we had talks about, you know, tell the girls I tried, do this, do that, the insurance paperwork's here. Don't let them play Going Up Yonder at my funeral. I want to be cremated. I don't want to you have to buy a dress. And all that we covered. And so the doctors were talking to him, and they were telling him things like I had a 1% chance of finding a donor in Dallas.
Wow.
I didn't know that. And so they had told him, we're at the point where you need to make a decision on pulling the plug. And so he went home and he was like, how am I supposed to tell my kids, mommy's gonna die? What do I do? And so he said God told him, find an alternative. And so it was like 11 o'clock at night. He gets up, he gets on Google, and he starts contacting all these, high risk, at 11 o'clock at night, all these high risk lung transplant places in the U.S. And so 2 places came up, one in Canada and one in Maryland. So he actually called Canada first and left a message. And then he called Maryland. And the secretary actually answered the phone, and he was like...
At 11 o'clock at night.
So it's 12 o'clock on the East Coast.
Midnight in Maryland.
And so she's like, hello. And this is Robert Young. And she's, of course, like saying, who is Robert Young? And so, long story short, he had emailed the lead doctor for the transplant team. And he said, let me email you what I'm talking about so that you understand what I'm saying. And so in the letter, which he hasn't read since he sent it, but he talks about, me being sick and, we have 5 kids and all of this. And so he sent it to her, she reads it, and she puts him on hold. And then she goes off for 15 or 20 minutes, and she comes back, she's like, Mr. Young, all of our transplant doctors are meeting right now for their cases tomorrow. And
all of the transplant doctors
at midnight.
At midnight, we're in the meeting. All 12 doctors
are meeting. I gave them your email, and I hope that they can help your family. She hangs up the phone. So 20 minutes later, he gets an email from the lead doctor saying, I want to help your wife, and I'll contact you in the morning. So the next morning, he goes and he's like, don't do anything. Don't pull the cord. Don't do anything. I have a doctor that's, said he's going to help. Well, he never called. Dr. Icon never called all day. And so he was like, God, I was obedient.
Right.
I did what you said. I found an alternative. I did all this. I got up out of bed. And like 3 in the afternoon, my doctor comes in with all these papers. And she's like, I've been on the phone with Dr. Icon from University of Maryland since this morning.
Wow.
And we're going to do ECMO, we're going to do this and this and this, and then we're going to transfer her to Maryland.
So how, in the grand scheme, how unheard of it is for all this to happen like that?
UT Southwestern had never transferred a patient out. You either go there and you're healed, or you
die there.
Yeah. So this was all new to them. It was $128,000 just for the flight. Cash money. No insurance. They wanted verified funds. And because UT Southwestern hadn't done that before, they didn't have an account. And so I don't know who paid it. I haven't received a bill. I guess UT paid it. But they came from Chicago.
I have no questions.
I have no questions. They came from Chicago, picked me up, and flew me to Maryland. And then within 2 days, I was transplanted.
Okay, so, all right, and I am getting chills and in tears myself because I was just part of the journey on just the prayer team. And one thing that Lia has shared with me was that she is a believer in prayer. And just speak to them about what you discussed with me about faith and prayer and just that.
I just think that having the faith when people are saying you're going to die or the worst is going to happen.
Exactly.
And so many people were praying, and I didn't visualize my funeral. I visualized my 40th birthday.
Right.
Me and my kids on the beach, and I never thought I'm going to die. I always was, when I get over this,
Exactly.
My 30s sucked. My 40s are going to be so good, after this. And so
do you believe that, because you said you didn't see your funeral, you were seeing yourself on the beach and in your 40s, do you believe that was wasn't denial, but you believe it was just faith, and that is what kind of willed you through.
I think so. And also, I had positive people around me. You know, please don't come in my room crying and
Right.
playing. I'm so sorry. No, you know, please don't do that. But you always was positive. They coming up, hey girl, you know, what are you doing? When I could talk, when I could communicate. There was a part in there where I had to write or use sign language. But you know, just being positive and having faith. And I didn't know how God was gonna do it. I couldn't have planned it the way it worked out. But I just knew it was all gonna work out. I just knew.
Right. Okay, so you get the transplant within 2 days of being in Maryland. And so how long do you stay in Maryland? Because there is a significant healing process after that.
So I was admitted on the 25th, transplanted on the 27th, and I stayed there till the Tuesday before Thanksgiving in-house. And so we stayed at a extended stay hotel suite until January. And then we met up with a family there, and they had a finished out basement and apartment. So the last month we stayed with them. So we came home February 7th.
Wow. Yay.
Yay.
Okay, so like my husband's Eric, and I know for sure that if he saved my life, I could never live it down. Hey, come scratch my back.
Yeah.
Because you know I saved your life, right? So how is that relationship
Yeah.
between you and Robert now?
He doesn't hold that against me. You know, like, he doesn't bring it up like you know, tonight because I saved your life. No, he's not like that. But you know, in the back of my head, I'm always like, well, go get the Corvette. I mean, he doesn't have a Corvette, but I'm just like, whatever. You know, you saved my life. But we were much stronger than we were. We've always been very close, like you know, friends, very friendly and bonded. But I think our faith grew tremendously, and then just our support of each other.
Right.
Because it's hard being a husband.
Exactly.
Or even a spouse with a sick, you know, mate. Because he describes as being, you know, helpless. It's nothing that he can do.
Right.
You want to make them better, but there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. So, post this, how is your health now?
It's great. It's been 14 months. I have had no signs of rejection or infection or anything. I go back in March for you know, the standard biopsy and bronchoscopy where they just take a sample and test it, and just to see my doctor and say hello.
Right.
So
how are you different? Like, not so much physically, but how were you changed by this whole experience?
well, for one, I don't take anything for granted, even the smallest things. Like, it was 2 years during that time where I hadn't even gone upstairs in my own house. I couldn't go tuck my kids in to sleep. You know, there were days I couldn't comb their hair. I couldn't walk to the kitchen and make a sandwich. So, I mean, even little things, I'm like, woo, you know. I walked up the stairs, you know. And so, I mean, even now, just the little things, just being able to, like, go to their games and sit on the sidelines. To be able, like, for the first time I laughed.
Wow.
Like, laughed loud. I was like, wow. You know, like, I
I
can laugh.
remember that.
I can sing at
I
church. You know, I
remember.
can sing now without having to not sing or hum because I can't breathe. So I take nothing for granted.
Nothing for granted. So, and you described to me one time what it felt like. I was like, how does it feel not to be able to breathe? And you had like a very vivid, you know, example for me.
So if you took those coffee stirrer straws and if you put those in your nose and sealed it off and tried to breathe through that. So you're not getting, you know, the force or the amount that you need. And that little bitty straw, you're trying to get into your lungs. And it sets off anxiety. Because you know in your head, I'm not getting enough. And so you have to kind of, okay, calm down, you know, turn my oxygen up or whatever. But that's what, it's very scary.
So when you talk about anxiety, because it might not be for somebody that they cannot breathe, but it might be other issues that brings anxiety. So can you speak to the realness and for real condition of having anxiety?
I learned that anxiety is real. And I did used to kind of smirk at people who said, you know, I take medication or I'm going to therapy for anxiety. And I was like, that is fake. That is a fake diagnosis. But it is real. And, you know, being a nurse, it's hard sometimes to be the patient. Mm-hmm. And so I would see my monitor with my, you know, vital signs on there. And I'm like, that is not good. And just every day having to, okay, how many tanks am I going to need today? How many of this am I going to need? Am I going to get in a wreck on 35 and, you know, be in traffic for 2 hours and run out of oxygen? And just that anxiety of trying to plan everything and coordinate. And just really when I truly gave it to God and just was like, I can't do this. That just lifted so much off.
What does it look like to give it to God? Like, that sounds kind of so broad. Can you give me examples of when you say, I gave it to God? What did that look like?
I stopped trying to plan everything. Just, you know, and I stopped worrying about what happens after I'm gone. You know, if I die, whatever. You know, I go to heaven, y'all are going to be sad, but I win regardless. If I live, I win. I get to see all those things that I thought I would miss. But, you know, just saying, take this. You know, I cannot do this. I'm not going to worry about it. Whatever happens, happens.
So I'm hearing you say that you developed a peace that, because I believe in an afterlife called heaven, that if God chooses to take me, I am okay with that. And if he doesn't,
I'm okay with that too.
I'm okay with that too.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's hard.
Yeah, that is.
Because for selfish reason, you want to stay around.
Exactly.
You know, and your kids and your husband but it's like whatever I was appointed to do has been done. I still win.
I still win. That's good.
Yeah.
So it seems like you and Robert were like really instrumental throughout the whole process, but definitely towards the end at directing your care.
Yes.
So tell me, like, when the doctors are telling you one thing, and I mean, like, how do you push back again? I mean, like, talk to me about when the medical field is saying one thing and you got the white coats telling you this. Like, how do you usurp that? Like,
I just, you know, I was on a part of a blog and on a Facebook page with other transplant patients. And I was also part of a scleroderma support group. So I got a lot of information that way. And I just had set in my head things that you were not going to do to me. You know, you're not going to put me on intubation early. You know, this is all about insurance, you know. And so just making sure that they knew that I was well versed in knowing what was happening to me.
So for other people, just in general, who are, you know, whether it be you need to get a tooth extraction, you know, what advice would you give to people on just how to make sure that they're, I mean, because I'm not a doctor and I don't know, like, how do I make sure that the right thing is happening to me and not just being carried away by the currents of what they say?
I think that it's very hard. I mean, if I were not a nurse, I think that I wouldn't have as much confidence to say, no, not this, I'm gonna try this, whatever. But getting as much information as you can, talking to patients who have gone through the similar situation, always get a second opinion. Always. Don't just go by what one person thinks, because it's the practice of medicine. It's a practice. You know, they're gonna try it on you.
Exactly.
Yes, it may be tested. They've had other, but every person is different, and you really need to be your own advocate.
Awesome. So how are your kids now? Mommy's well, mommy's at home, and not just your kids, but how are you and Robert, and did you guys go to counseling? Because this is a lot for a family to go through. So without being dramatic, like, what has been the aftermath of, like, mommy almost died?
It is an aftermath, you know, because it was a lot emotionally, physically, financially. All areas of our life was touched by this for 5 years, really. And so we did go to counseling, and, you know, especially with the littles, the 8-year-old and the 4-year-old. because they saw a lot. And we wanted to make sure that they were processing it well. And my 4-year-old, she is like stuck to my side. She is like in my lap. She's, I cannot, where are you going? I'm packing my bags for this weekend. She's like, are you going to Baltimore? I'm like, no, I'm not going to Baltimore. Or if I have a doctor's appointment, I kind of have to not tell them. Or if it comes up, I'm like, I'm just going for a flu shot. It's going to be okay. And then my 8-year-old, if I call for, if my head hurts, she's like, are you okay? Are you all right? And
So looking back on it, would there be anything different you would do to, I don't know, shield the kids, or what would anything so they won't be as affected by it? I don't know.
I don't know, because a lot of what happened, I was unconscious, and so, and then there was a section where they couldn't come to visit me, and so my husband would tell them how mommy's doing today. And so maybe just being more aware that they are around when we're talking amongst each other, so that they can get information on their level, and maybe not as intense. It was an intense situation, but maybe just more. We did have child life specialists.
Okay.
Talk to them.
Right.
About the possibility. And so that was good, but they know a lot.
Yeah.
And it, unfortunately, I think it matured them more than I would have liked at such a young age.
Okay, so I'm sure having conversations about who's going to take care of the kids if something happens while you're in the midst of something happening is very, very difficult.
Yes.
So what would be your advice to people who are relatively healthy on what they need to do to prepare for in the event of?
Yeah. First of all, take advantage of short-term disability at your job or whatever way, because you never know what happens. And then just prepare your family. Get your will. Let them know you're an organ donor or whatever the case may be. Prepare the godparents to be the parents should you and your spouse or whatever should pass. Any preparation is going to make it better.
All right.
Yeah, and let your family know. Like, you let your husband know, but let your mama know.
Right.
so
So
she's
she won't
not
be
offended
arguing
and be
with
like,
you.
no, she told me I could have that TV. All her money go to Uncle Joe or whatever.
But that is very true. If you tell your husband this, but then you have this extended family that, you want to make sure that they are in support of what you've communicated to your spouse.
Maybe not in support of, because they may not support it, but that they are aware.
Aware of. Very good, because that's true. Nobody, because you know how them in-laws can be.
Yeah.
So, very good. So, I would like for you just to give the people what you would say, what you learned from this whole experience in a nutshell. And then the second question is, what are you now looking forward to having come out of this?
I just learned about faith and having faith, being faithful, and that God, He fulfills His promises to you, and that that He's never going to forsake you. So that is like the number one thing, is just having faith, believing in His promises to you. And then the other part was,
what are you looking forward to in 2018?
I'm just going to do everything that that's what I would pray was, please, let me recoup everything I've lost the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Getting my master's degree, birthday parties are like crazy now. We're going to do all of this. We got a Blimp, we got Barney coming, we got the magician's coming, everybody's coming. So just taking advantage of all those memories and just cherishing them while you're in it. Just, yes, you may hate going to soccer practice for the third time this week, but they're children for such a short time. And you have time with your spouse or with your family, and take advantage of those, because you never know when they could be gone.
Exactly. And I'm going to feed you one last thing that you told me. You mentioned prayer one time, and just I'll let you take that.
Just corporate prayer, because I use GoFundMe kind of like a blog, and so I couldn't. There was a point where I couldn't talk or communicate, so I would just write and tell people, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. I'm crying today because this sucks. But people were praying for me that I didn't know, and even today, people will come up and say, "Girl, you're Lia." They'll look at my badge. Oh, at work. Oh, you're Lia. I prayed for you, and just knowing that I had like cheerleaders, and I couldn't let them down.
Exactly.
I had to be positive, and we're gonna get through this together. And I just think prayer and having that conversation with God,
and not just saying, "Oh, I'm gonna pray for you," and turn away.
Yeah. Girl, I'm gonna pray for you. It's gonna be all right. And then you go off about your business. But really, truly praying for that person and wanting the best for them.
Yes.
That's
Y'all don't even understand. This is my miracle right here, because like I said, I was one of those that was like, God, this is what we are asking you to do, and he did it. Yeah. And I am so excited. And you guys don't know this, but we are at this little girls' weekend where we are just living it up. It's 11 of us in this little house, and I'm just glad that you're here to kick it with us. And God is just so good. So thank you for tuning in. And I don't know, I'm just bubbly and happy right now because I'm sitting next to my miracle. I think that sometimes we see like the Jobs of the Bible, when God, parted the Red Sea, and God did all these other things. But when you can say that this is my miracle, that it really increased my faith. So, and I just want to tell you, like, we learned from you so much. Like, Leah, in order for her to talk to us, she would have to like take the mask off, say something, and put it back on. But during that whole time, she just unwavered faith that God was going to heal her. And when you feel like you're breathing in air through a stirrer, but you're still saying, God is going to heal me. It was just a testament of faith, and I appreciate you having the faith. So we're going to go get back to kicking it up here in Fredericksburg, Texas. So thanks for tuning in, and have faith.
Amen.